All right, good evening. I'd like to call this meeting of the Lakeville Planning Board to order. It's Thursday, August 10th, 2023 at 7 p.m. We are meeting at the Lakeville Police Station meeting room. And for the record, LakeCAM is recording this meeting. Is anybody else recording this meeting? That said, we do have a quorum. And so the first item on our agenda is a continued public hearing for 13 Main Street. And at the applicant's request, they have requested that we continue until September 14th at 7 p.m. So that said, I make a motion to continue the public hearing for 13 Main Street until September 14th at 7 p.m.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Next item on our agenda is a continued public hearing for the site plan review of 156 Rhode Island Road. So at this time, if you could come up, Mr. Sikorsky.
Well,
Okay. So to bring everybody up to speed, we received a set of plans today. I haven't thoroughly reviewed them. However, there was a note with them that the only change on these plans was the driveway opening to 54 feet to meet the bylaw.
Yep.
You and I spoke earlier today. You had some concerns about the conditions that were written in the decision for closing out your project. Do you want to go through those with us now, or do you want to wait for Bob? We could always go through minutes and stuff.
I think we can do some of it. Well,
I don't want to, paint you into a corner if you want your engineer here. You're paying him to be here, and we can install a little bit.
Something else you can do?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So we had two sets of minutes in our packet. Did everybody get a chance to review them? We had minutes for Thursday, May 25th and Thursday, June 8th.
I was not present for either of these.
I'm sorry, say again?
I was not present for either of these.
No.
Did you have any comments or concerns about the May 25th minutes, John?
No.
All right, I'm going to make a motion to approve the May 25th minutes as drafted.
Second.
Jack, you made it.
I made it.
Okay, so that said, I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries with a majority. Next minutes was Thursday, June 8th. Again, so Jack, John, and myself were present. Did you guys have any comments or changes to those? It's pretty abbreviated, half-hour meeting.
No.
That said, I make a motion to approve the June 8th minutes as drafted.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. As just an announcement, our next meeting will be September 14th at 7 p.m. Confirming here at the police station meeting room, Kathy? And it doesn't actually say that on the agenda. It says to be confirmed, so we don't have business. Nonext meeting to be determined. So
But it is, it's both.
we're not doing the second meeting in August.
No,
Okay.
no, I will cancel that tomorrow, the room.
So something else we could work on is the discussion regarding a policy for additional hearing submittals. I know it's sort of been a ongoing thing that engineers will make their amendments and sometimes get us a plan an hour before the meeting because it's a continuation of a public hearing. So all of the initial submittals were filed properly, and then a lot of times we don't get enough time to review those late submittals. So we've talked about trying to put a deadline. And I was just thinking maybe Tuesday close of business. If we don't have them 48 hours before when the agenda gets posted, then we have the right to refuse them. but we still want to be able to waive that right. For example, if it is just the amendments we've requested, I think that's acceptable, that we could let those come in last minute, but if there are any changes unexpected, we would possibly decline those being accepted for that meeting.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I had mentioned it before that Concom will take a vote. I think that would be a good way, like have that cut off on Tuesday, 4 p.m. And then if there's like extenuating circumstances and they want to explain it and let the board vote, you know.
Vote to accept the plan or not.
I like that as a.
Basically, the denial of that would be just forcing a continuance because they didn't meet the requirements of submittal.
Right.
Does that all seem reasonable, Kathy?
Yeah.
And those changes can be made at a public meeting like this without a public hearing? Because that's just our regulations?
Yeah, it's just a policy. So I'll
So-
just add it, like we have our meetings posted, and when the deadline is, I'll just add that to that, you know, for additional meetings.
For additional submittals,
So, yeah.
that the cutoff is 48 hours prior. Or close of business, because
Yeah.
they could email them at 6:59
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say
after you're
4
out of the
p.m.
office.
Because you leave at 5,
Yeah.
so it shouldn't be like right as, you know, she shouldn't have to send it out at 5 o'clock.
I agree.
So,
You should have time to at least receive it in. So is that sufficient for
Yeah,
you
that's
to
fine.
receive and circulate it if somebody gets something at 3:59? All right, so I move that the planning board make a policy to have a cutoff of 4 p.m. on the Tuesday prior to a meeting, that additional submittals be accepted with the possible right to waive that if the planning board so chooses.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Mark, I'll bring you up to speed. We did continue the 13 Main Street at the applicant's request. We talked to Tyler briefly, but Bob Rigo is going to be coming in, so we've just gone on and tried to do some other business. So we've approved minutes. You were here just for the discussion about the additional submittals. I've announced that the next meeting is September 14th. I think we're getting caught up, other than the sign by law, OSRD, and Tyler. So,
Do you want to do one of those other 2 items while we wait for Bob, Rita?
yep, we might as well keep working.
Okay.
OSRD, why don't you, bring us up to speed on what comments conservation made, and do you have the amendments for Board of Health in there already?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the version that was sent out in the packet is the version that I reviewed with Concom, which has pretty much all the adjustments that they had requested from a year ago, as well as the adjustments that were requested by the Board of Health. So just to highlight the key things is that the Board of Health's main concern had to do with the suitability of lots being affected with
Small lots not having, and then the
exactly.
spite well issue we talked about.
Yes, so small lots having to have both well and septic on the same thing, on the same lot. You could affect the neighbor by moving a well. You could do a variety of things. So if everything's built by a single developer, it's less of an issue, but it still could be an issue. So in order to alleviate that, basically required that all
Either they have
all
to have public water
developments,
or a joint sewer.
exactly, public water or shared or a shared sewer system or onto so that the lots only have either all water or all sewer.
Right.
And then that way that whole public health issue goes away.
Yep.
So that's the primary concern that the Board of Health had. Conservation Commission had several that are addressed in this bylaw. First, they were concerned about accepting small, tiny pieces, what they considered tiny piece of open space, 2 acres, 3 acres, 5 acres. So we put a minimum lot size of 20 acres. The only caveat is that you can make it smaller, provided that the open space you're creating abuts an adjacent parcel of open space. So if you're doing a subdivision and, it's 10 acres and you're creating 5 acres of open space land, if it abuts a conservation piece and the Conservation Commission's willing to add on to their space, then you could do a smaller OSRD. Likewise, if it's Audubon land or Wildlands Trust land, those groups that have land in the town, if they're willing to accept it, then they could move forward with a smaller OSRD. One of the other concerns that Concom had was to ensure that the open space land was restricted by, specifically in here by Article 97, which would require going to the legislature to remove it from conservation purposes. So we've added that as well. I think that is about most of the things that were added to address. Oh, and one other thing had to do with, so procedurally, during the first, so there's a very informal come to the planning board, this is what I'd like to do, give them some general feedback, sketch plans based on, GIS mapping or something like that. It's just fine for those general discussions. But when they get to the preliminary stage, they would have to have more developed plans. So the Conservation Commission and the Board of Health were concerned about wetlands being properly mapped on the site. So I added in here that they have to file an ANRAD, a Notice of Resource Area Delineation, with the Commission, so that they have the wetland line approved, so that when the board is looking at the preliminary layout, which is the baseline for the number of lots, you can be reasonably assured that those lots can be developed. The other item that came up related to that with the Board of Health is that they still wanted all of the lots to at least have one test hole dug on, even the ones that would be located in the open space land. But they said that they can ensure that with a smaller machine, they can come in there and dig a hole without creating too much of an impact. And they wanted to make sure that because the soils can be quite variable here in Lakeville, that they wanted to make sure that all of the lots shown on the standard preliminary plan
Were actually buildable. So they didn't feel they needed to do 4 holes and 2 perks, but just one test hole so they could see that there's good soil, so that they can, because you're not going to design anything, you're just going to make sure it could be designed. So. And I think that process is certainly more important if you had the public water and you were placing septic systems on the lots. Because then the suitable soils are more required in that condition than they are if you had a joint sewage treatment system.
Yeah. And then, for the final stage, so if you approve the preliminary and the concept plan, when they file for the definitive, all of the lots, let's say they have a public water supply, all of the lots that would be getting the individual systems would have to have been perked at that time. So, or if they're doing a shared system, they have to have perked the area for the reserve system, as well as I think they also, I don't know whether they do the reserve area as well. But,
So that said, do any planning board members have any comments on this?
I've got a question, just like, have you been contacted by anybody, like landowners, developers with interest to use like an OSRD yet?
Not at this point. I mean, a few people have mentioned at meetings, you know, that whether it's a meeting here or with one of the other boards in the past, that it would be a good thing to, you know, to have. But I think most people understand you have to be able to really build the conventional subdivision so that there's no increase in the number of lots, or in that, you know, there is a set aside for the OSRD.
And
I mean, for the open space.
so, I mean, I like the improvements. I kind of want to see something more though, like that gives the town, I know we're getting some open space, but there's like a big plus to a developer or builder here, with these smaller lots, less roads to be built, even if it's like 10% senior housing or, because this doesn't help our subsidized housing inventory. And I'm still concerned that this is going to allow a large parcel to be developed that maybe couldn't. And I know like some of these things have been put in place to try to combat that, but I don't know.
Would it be possible? I know somewhere in there you have 50%, but you could go down to 40% if.
Right.
What if that was your leverage to get a percentage of senior housing, senior homes, age restricted, is the only reason you give the 10%. So you could reduce the open space, and the trade-off would be guarantee of, say, 15 or 20% age restricted housing. Is that?
Yeah, I think that's something we could do.
And I guess I'm asking more from a legal standpoint. I think it's a good thing.
Well,
I think it's because it's the senior housing thing is a master plan. It's on the wish list, so I think that's something we shouldn't ignore. And it'd be, I think, a great, you know, you'd be offering the 10% would be an incentive for a developer to do that, but.
So given some of and I've had some discussions with Amy, our counsel, Questle, on this, and that there's some new rulings about age-restricted housing that I'm trying to clarify for our 13 Main Street project.
Because it's age discrimination.
Right.
If it's required.
Yes, and so I'm trying to do, but what may be easier to do is to build an affordability component in. You can go to less if you have an affordable units, because those are, you know, so more accepting, and there's a, you know, a procedural thing that needs to be done. So, I mean, so we could. And this goes to Michelle's point, is that, you know, maybe one of the benefits of this is that regardless of whether you reduce the open space or not, but you could still require like 10% of the units to be affordable, or, you know, or some number as well, because they are saving, and they could use some of the savings to make a little less on one of the units, to make one out of every 10 or whatever
again,
number.
For sale units, so it's people that actually they're buying a home. It's not low income Section 8 housing. It's affordable housing.
And generally they have to build the exact same home. It's just the interior finishes can be a little different, you know. So.
Right, that's where they may make up some of the.
And I wonder if I really like that idea, and I think that since it wouldn't be like a 40B that would go through a lottery, maybe some language that would say preference or priority to Lakeville residents or relatives of, or something like that, so that those units the affordable units.
I think they did something like that when they were trying to do the lottery at LeBaron, and it wasn't just,
But that's the 40B,
Yeah.
so they give a preference to, residents.
right.
Or relatives of, or if you work in the
Or
town.
employees.
It's a little more difficult to do a local preference now than it used to be. They've tightened the rules on that. So I'd have to, I don't recall off the top of my head what they are, but I think we can try and require a local preference, and then I can talk to Amy about trying to see whether that is something that can be left in. But but you can require that a percentage of these be affordable, the affordable units. There would be a monitoring agreement, just like a 40B, and that agency would be the one that would oversee the initial sale as well as the future sales of the property to ensure that it maintains as an affordable unit in perpetuity. So,
I know we've talked about getting this to town meeting. Is that something that, do you think that you could do the research required so that on the September 14th meeting, we could take a look at that and not harm the timeline?
yes.
Okay.
So I thought the warrant closes off at the end of this month.
Yeah, I think it does.
So, I mean, do we have to rush it? I feel like we talked about this, we saw a lot of it last year, but then it kind of just popped up last meeting. I don't know if I just missed it a couple of times because I was away.
I'd have to,
Because now I know he did speak to, Concom and Board of Health, but are they all on board with this draft now? Because I don't want to bring this to town meeting and have somebody from another board or committee stand up and say, I don't like it.
So there were two minor things that are not in your draft that they did mention, that the Board of Health and Concom wanted to be notified about the informal pre-application meeting, just because they are involved more in the next step, which is the regular filing for the preliminary plan. So they just wanted that.
So even that language then should be changed instead of the board may invite, it
Yeah,
should-
well, I already changed.
Oh, you do have another
Yeah, I
version.
changed it, I just didn't, it's not in your draft, that's all. And then, there was one other language, they just, even though it's in another section, they wanted me to add the wording on the third page under dedicated open space, roadway layouts, and add and drainage basin shall be excluded from the open space land area calculations. It's in another section.
and that was just a clarification.
But they just-
We went back and
yes.
forth at conservation about that.
Right.
It was pointed out that it is in another paragraph as well.
Right. So that was the only two items from Concom.
And you're gonna meet with the Board of Health
I'm gonna go back.
next week?
Yeah, a couple of them wanted to, no, I met with the Board of Health already last week, but they wanted to see this revised draft because I added some revisions. I sent it to Ed on Monday, so.
Okay.
I mean, I would feel more comfortable getting a draft that everybody is on board with and bring it to spring.
Well, we just need to ask for it to be on the warrant. We don't need it to be completed. We need it completed by the public hearing.
Yeah, I think what we could do is we could submit it to the select board and then, you could submit a revised draft to the select board if you wanted to. I believe they could accept that if they chose to. Remember, the select board can adjust the warrant up until
Right.
much closer date to town meeting.
And could the planning board request to have it withdrawn if we weren't happy at that point, if we just couldn't?
Yes,
get to-
you could
Yeah,
as
so
well.
I think that we do proceed in that manner, and then worst case, Michelle, if we can't get it to that 99%, then we can request to have it withdrawn, but I think we do try.
Okay.
So that said, we'll table that discussion until the next meeting, and if you could try to look at getting that component about affordability, and get us the revised language from the Board of Health and Concom, in the copy we have.
No.
And
Are you gonna meet in 2 weeks, or?
no,
No.
we said the next meeting is gonna be September 14th. So, for that meeting. So you got a month, but.
So you would have to, I think, vote to submit this to the select board before the end of the month.
All right, you guys comfortable with that?
You have section 7.10.4.
Yeah, the numbering's gonna probably
Okay.
have to change because we're still waiting on the Attorney General's approval of the recodification. So that should be coming in like any time now, within the next week or two. So the entire numbering system's gonna have to change because we reorganized, town meeting in the spring voted to approve the reorganization of the town bylaws. So this whole numbering is gonna have to be a different numbering set.
So I guess the problem I see is if we send this to the select board, they're gonna see
It's
a
gonna have to
draft
change anyway.
Yeah.
that we haven't even,
So is that, or we have to tell them? It's really, isn't it reserving a space on the warrant is all that we're really doing at this point?
yeah.
And so when we, again, we'd have to hold the public hearing, and that's the draft
Yes.
that we want finalized, and that's gonna be sometime after September 14th and before November 11th.
Right.
So, I think that we should recommend that the select board put the OSRD on the warrant, and we just need to work to clean this up. So, I'm gonna make a motion to that effect, to put the OSRD on, ask the select board to put the OSRD bylaw on the warrant for fall town meeting.
Second?
Have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Gentlemen, you're back up. Welcome, Bob.
Thanks for rearranging a little bit, appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. So I did ask Tyler to come up initially, didn't want to put him too much in the hot seat without you here. So we did receive a new set of plans. We're told, and I didn't get to review them yet, that the only real change was the opening on Rhode Island Road to 54 feet, which meets with the bylaw.
That's correct.
Tyler had some concerns about some of the conditions in the decision that we have that you guys just got, I think, today or
Yes.
something.
Yep.
So do you have anything you want to discuss, or you want to go right into the?
No, just to add, and this is just, you had asked us to prepare a plan, a single plan that shows both lots combined that can be recorded at the registry.
It's not showing that too. That combined too, isn't it? The new thing he just got.
Yeah, and
That's on.
the plans that you received also show everything combined. They show the ownership. Tyler did purchase it on Monday. So those plans, there's a couple of deed references and references to ownership that also changed on the plans. And we prepared that 81X plan, which will get recorded tomorrow by Tyler. It's right there. It's just awaiting recording.
Does that satisfy everything from a legal standpoint for the lot coverage and everything that we want?
Yep.
Okay. Where am I? So we have a site plan approval document that, again, you guys got today. Tyler, you had voiced a couple of concerns. Do you want to go through those?
Yeah. Let's see. So the number 5, the screening of loam and gravel or other materials not take place on the property. When does that take effect? Upon approval? Or,
Tyler had a concern, that if it's construction related, he should still be able to do it if it's staying on site as part of the project. But, you know, it shouldn't be going on as a business.
So you mean up until you start construction, can you continue to do that?
Yeah, well, my concern is that's my business right now, and I agreed to stop doing that, but if I stop now, that's, until I'm built, that's my business. That's what I do.
Okay.
So if I can't screen loom, you just...
So how about, once the, building permit is issued?
That's a couple months. I mean, they need this fall,
When are you gonna pull a building permit?
as soon as I can.
Right, so while you're building, you'd like to continue to operate that?
Once I need to go forth with my drainage, I can't anymore, I have no more room. So, not long, but I just don't wanna tie myself up right now where I'm, you know what I mean? I'm gonna stop doing it, that's not the
Right, I understand.
issue.
Yeah.
It's just, right now, I don't have somewhere else to move right this second, I'm not at that, I'm almost there, I'm just not there yet. It's just the
We
time.
just want to create language just to make that work for him.
Yeah,
We wanna
I
see the
want
project
to
go
try
on.
and create language, but, you know, so you're saying the issuance of the building permit's a little too soon, but the issuance of an occupancy is almost too late because your
I'm not gonna be past
basins,
no, yeah, I need to.
your basins need to be done
I have no
way
room.
beforehand, and you're not gonna have room, and,
What about before any inspections are done? Because then all that drainage is being inspected, right? All that
Of
stuff.
course, yeah.
Right, so what about before that? They can't get any inspections till that's done.
okay, so,
We'll cease prior to,
Yeah, I have no room once I'm in that end of
Right,
it,
when
but I
you're
just,
at that
for
point.
right now, you can't, it's gonna put me out, like that's my only,
okay. So why don't we just say, once the drainage, basins and structures are in place, plus then that'll probably ruin them by
That will.
all the material, right,
yeah.
are in place, then no screening of loam gravel out of material shall take place. Okay.
Number 6, there shall be no outside work on vehicles or construction equipment. When does that take effect? Because right now, none of my stuff fits in my existing building. I have no choice but to.
Once an occupancy permit is issued,
Now, okay, on weekends, I'll pop the hoods on my truck, check the oil, check them out. I have to pull them inside to do that.
no, that's, but I mean, you're not working on them. But if you're gonna
we
go
might need to
change
be a little
the,
bit careful with that because we don't want people calling on him if he's checking his oil.
I'm checking my
There-
tire pressure.
yeah, that's not working on your vehicle, but if you do check your oil and you go, oh, this is, yeah, I need to go pull the plug and change the filter, let's say,
How about if we just
then
change
you
it,
gotta
there
pull
should
it
be
in,
no
then you gotta pull it
commercial
inside.
work on vehicles?
So
Instead of,
I believe it's allowed for a business to service their own vehicles, but not work on other people's vehicles, then it becomes mechanic work.
Right, that's a different district, isn't it?
Does that not help with this language, just to?
Well, I mean, I think we're just trying to, you know, sometimes you add extra conditions regardless of what the zoning allows to, because, you know, it is.
Right,
in
but
a-
we know that the scrutiny that this has been under, and we
Right.
just don't want to create a condition where, again, to Tyler's example, on Saturday morning, he goes through and checks
Yeah.
all the oil on all his trucks, and all of a sudden there's a phone call.
But that's not doing work, that's just check, that's just
But
check.
that's
the-
perception.
It can be
Who's gonna make that
perceived though.
decision? Yeah.
Well,
Where's
but,
the
you know,
line?
I think that gets down to, you know, our enforcement of the conditions, and I think, you know, that's not work. Now, let's say you determine you do have to change the oil, then you pull that truck inside and you go change the oil so that you're not changing it out in the parking lot. But to check tire pressure and oil pressure or add fluids, that's not really work, so. That's
I'd
not,
be okay with removing number 6 personally, because anything that's not compliant with the zoning would then go up to the zoning enforcement officer.
well,
So,
but the problem with that is you don't know who's gonna rent some of the bays, and so you might get a auto mechanic.
No, you won't. I don't want that. I don't want that.
Yeah, but, you know, again,
but that would,
It's not even, that doesn't fit. It's industrial use, not even by right use in
That's
modern
allowed by
mechanic
special
industrial.
permit,
Yeah.
right?
That's special permit.
Or something.
That's business
okay,
district.
well,
so I think-
I agree, you know, there's a fine line we're walking
Right.
here. I don't think we want mechanic work done outside, but I also don't want,
I just know that equipment needs like regular maintenance and work, and, you know, in order to keep them functioning, you know, heavy equipment needs that, so.
I mean, right now I can't, no, but yeah, later on I can. But right now I climb under my trucks, just instead of moving them all, I just go right underneath them and look through everything, I grease them, check everything right there on the spot instead of moving them all. I mean, it's just inconvenient. I mean, I get what you're saying. You don't want me pulling motors out in the front yard and everyone drives by and sees that. I understand that. And I'm not trying to do that. Right now, that's my only option.
So we need language that says that, but not,
you don't want
not
major,
hamstrings.
you don't want major repairs going on. You don't want motors out, transmissions out in the parking lot.
Regular maintenance.
Yeah, I understand that.
How about just conformance to zoning bylaws or something in relation to mechanic work or? Because I mean, I work in the industrial park, so I know what other companies' industrial zone do. And I don't think we should be encouraging extra phone calls about him greasing a truck.
Let's see. Maybe we define what work is, mechanical repairs, you know. There should be no outside repair of vehicles. Kind of leaves the.
I mean, well, this is a gray area though.
Major, I think we have to say no major mechanical repairs be done outside after occupancy. That you know, have a maintenance bay and you do them inside. Okay?
Yeah, that's fine. Major repairs. No, like changing a tire, that's not a major repair, right? I mean,
no. Checking your oil is not a major repair. General maintenance is not a major repair.
You're saying you don't,
We don't want you to be pulling fenders off and doing body work outside, changing motors. Do that inside if you're going to do it, and it's allowed as you do that as one of your own. Maintain your own vehicles, and it's allowed doing inside.
Yeah.
So there shall be no major mechanical repairs outside on vehicles or construction equipment after occupancy permit?
Yeah.
Beyond general maintenance.
Beyond
What's
what?
next?
Like beyond like general maintenance.
There shall be no outdoor storage of construction and landscape equipment, landscape materials, sorry. So, it's pretty gray to me.
Yeah, it's pretty broad. So what would be the concern or the items?
You had said to me something about like a bundle of pipe or something.
If I had a lift of pipe delivered or a lift of 2x6 delivered, I can't have those outside. I mean, they can't.
Well, I don't know, is there a room or an area that's designated on the plans for like outdoor storage of?
I mean, I understand where you're going with that,
yeah,
but
because that's the thing.
But say I don't have all my parking spots on where my trucks are going full. I think I show 8 tractor trailer parking over there. I'm almost down to 2 at this point. There's still more there, but they're all. If I have room available in my area, I can't have.
Yeah, he's fine with no mulch or, you know, it's there now, or the stone, those type of operations like loose materials, bulk, but it's something that's packaged or.
Yeah, you don't want piles of dirt in my parking lot and stone. I don't. That's not going to work. It's going to go in my drainage. I'm aware. I understand that.
All right. We also, I guess, we don't want it to look like.
Yeah, you don't want stuff stuck
unfenced plumb and supply yard either.
No.
You know. So, you know, work with us to say I only got to do X and Y, and it's this many square feet, and we try to make a condition that allows you to stay within what you think is reasonable for you and that will look nice. You know, if you say I might have 2 or 3 lifts, I might steal 2 or 3 of my parking spaces.
Yeah, like my snow plows. Those, I have to put those inside. I can't put those in a parking spot.
Well, it says material stuff, so that to me is not.
That falls under that.
So that doesn't fall under that. Okay. All right.
But
So
I would add.
landscape material.
So how about like landscaping materials or construction like uncontained,
or bulk, is bulk?
Yeah, like,
loose.
Loose, you know, like it's gotta be in bundles on pallets.
It's gotta look presentable.
You know, but then how do we, it's not like there's a designated, like in some plans, there's a designated outdoor storage area, you know,
And
where
are
all
we
that
talking about
stuff
just
should
once
be.
he's got the occupancy permit? Because obviously he's gonna have construction.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is after, so I think that needs to be added also.
Yeah, I mean,
So it's not.
Well, generally, these conditions would apply post-occupancy.
Post-occupancy.
Okay.
But,
So this,
So that one's no storage of loose construction?
loose or unpackaged construction and landscape material.
And are we specifying after occupancy or no?
Well, you still have stuff stored, well, yeah, because he's still gonna utilize, because he's, unlike a lot of sites, he's using the site in a certain way right now, so he does have that, so I think we need to say, after occupancy.
Okay. So that one's good?
I was trying to draft the new, any outside storage should be kept at a minimum and all materials shall be secured and neatly stacked or baled, if we wanted to, you know, rather than just say no, allow something, but at a minimum, so you're,
Well, that's a undefined
Yeah.
thing, so that's the problem. Like loose or unpackaged is, that's clearly, you know, stuff's,
As long as it's not pallet or wrapped
Right.
or something bundled.
so what's the language gonna say for that one then?
I said, there shall be no outdoor storage of loose or unpackaged or non-packaged construction or landscape materials after occupancy.
Okay. I'm good with that. Everyone else good with that?
Yes.
Next problem.
the applicant shall return to planning board for site plan review should they want to make any site changes or expand the use onto the newly acquired abutting property. So, right now it's tires, campers, trash everywhere.
So that, to me, does say you're increasing the lot coverage.
Yeah, I'm not.
For you to
yeah.
increase the lot coverage, you need to return to us.
Right.
It doesn't say that you can't go over there. I think
Okay.
he's allowed to clean that up and maintain that based on the
Yeah.
language of that.
Okay, so I can clean all the dead trees out and all the
Yeah, you
scrub
can-
out. And
You can clean it up, but you can't really use it.
I don't plan
You
on
can't
using it.
make parking.
Yeah,
You
I have no
can't all of a
intentions.
sudden, you move your dirt piles in your screening operation or,
No, no
you know, or
intentions.
park trucks over there, or, you know, you can make it look
It's
pretty
that,
and
to
stuff like
the
that.
language of the bylaw, you can't make parking, loading, and
Yeah.
storage.
That's fine.
But you are certainly allowed, within the language of that condition,
Okay.
to do
come
any
back.
maintenance over there, to cut it, to clean up trees, to clean up a tire dump. Certainly, that's all gonna be allowed. It's the going backwards, making a tire pile.
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine. That's understandable.
All right, what's next?
Just trying to, it was for the drainage basins. I think it was
12?
I think it was 12. Yeah. So, yeah, number 12.
You were just concerned about grass
About
and
grass.
depending on the season, so he was just concerned that, if he would be eligible to obtain occupancy in January, but he didn't get it seeded.
Well, we should be holding a performance guarantee to ensure that that happens then. And then after it's done, he would get that returned.
Like a bond or something you're saying?
Well, like a cash amount deposited. That's usually
So,
what we get.
I think that should just be language added then, so that at the time of request of occupancy, if he doesn't have the grass growing, that he come back and request for that waiver or something to that language.
I
Okay.
mean, that might not happen. I might, and
Right, you might just have it all
I'm just
seeded.
saying, I don't want to trap myself now where I have
I
to
get
wait
it.
5 months.
You're smart to
you
ask
would
that
have to
question.
be moving really quick too. Do you have like the
Well,
building?
this year, but who knows? what-
No, not this year. I'm saying
He's not
next. I'm
scheduled.
Oh,
saying.
you're
I'm not
the
saying
fall.
this year.
Yeah,
Oh no,
okay.
geez, no.
That's what I'm saying. yeah.
No, my electrical sockets are 10 months out. No.
Maybe next winter,
Yeah, that's what I'm. That's
Oh,
where
I
I'm
see.
at.
but you
Yeah.
can't plant grass or
Okay.
be doing it for nothing.
Right.
Yep, okay, I'll
Just-
add something about that.
Do we have to specify how much that amount
Yeah,
is?
you gotta specify like 5 or 10 grand. Just enough to make him wanna come back, finish it and come back and get his money, so.
Yeah, so when you're to occupancy, if you can't grow grass, you'll come back to us. We're gonna ask you for $5,000. We're gonna hold that till the grass grows.
That's fine.
And then you just get it back. It goes in a, I believe the typical process is it's in an interest-bearing account with your name on it in whatever bank the town uses, and you get that back plus interest once your grass grows.
That's fine. And I
Next.
I think the last thing was, number 16. Once a building permit is issued, I have 12 months to complete it. So
It might be a stretch with some, material, the supply chain stuff.
Okay.
So is there a way to, give him a possibility of an extension if,
Sure.
I don't want to just create like
I think.
non-performance and then just come back and ask for an extension of 12 months, as much as you've shown you're 80% there, but you're at 11 months. You want to come back in and say, hey, I'm not going to make it in a month.
Right.
Can I get a 3 or 6 month extension? So we just want him to have a mechanism to do that.
Yeah, I think, so, yeah, or let's say, or the applicant shall return to the board with a schedule for completion. Like you say, if there's certain kind of components that you need for that building because of the type of building it is and they're being delayed. What we don't want, and the reason is for construction to stall, nothing to happen.
you don't want me dragging
And
it.
for that, all of a sudden, things change, the rules change, and then for this to be like sitting out there, forever, so.
We want you to finish it as quick as you can, and we want you to be successful. We just don't want it to linger. So,
Right.
yeah, we just need some sort of a mechanism for him to be able to come back and ask for some sort of an extension or
Yep.
justify an overrun in that, within the language of that, so he doesn't feel
Yep.
we're trying to pull his building permit after 12 months because he's going to take 13.
Yep.
You good with that, Tyler?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other concerns about those?
I think that was, I think that's it.
Does the planning board have any other questions or concerns about this approval of site plan review document?
This is very extensive.
Yeah.
I mean, as long as,
You can live with all that and you'll be able to perform all this?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're good with, we'll make these changes. We're gonna vote right now to, did we already close this hearing or?
no.
No, we're gonna close this hearing and vote to have the chair sign this document
Issue, along with
and
the
issue the site plan
conditions.
approval. With the
With the
conditions.
changes.
The changes.
Yeah.
I will fill out some additional discussion in the dates and some of the other information prior to the signing.
All right, so I'm gonna make a motion to close the public hearing for 156 Rhode Island Road site plan review. And approve the site plan approval, document to be filed with the town clerk with changes to conditions 5, 6, 7, 12, and 16 as discussed tonight. And have the chair be,
Authorized.
the only member to sign the document.
Second.
Have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Alright,
Motion carries. So that starts the process, Tyler. You're off and running, you're done with us, in theory. This document, I'll sign it once Mark makes the changes. It'll be filed at the town clerk's office. There's like a 21-day period where then at our next meeting, if there's no appeal, which I don't think that there should be any appeal, we'll sign the plan and you're off and running. So like I say, it's really, I don't think you guys need to come back at all, as much as just check in with Kathy or Mark or myself or whoever, just to make sure everything's all square and we've signed that plan. I'm sure, Bob, at that point, you'll request one from us, or how's that gonna work?
Request a plan?
A signed plan?
Yep, we'll get the signed plan.
Okay. Good luck.
Okay, thank you very much, appreciate it, thank you.
So next item on the agenda, sign regulations. Sue, you're not sticking around for that?
No. But thanks for asking.
They were here, they wanted to speak to 13 Main Street, which got continued. Oh. It got continued last minute, so they didn't see the change in the agenda. I don't know if they got posted on the agenda.
No.
Because it's so late.
Yeah.
Michelle, did you want to go through the sign bylaw thing? I think you
Sure.
you actually generated this draft.
Yep. It's really just the changes at the end. I put it back to, because I was gonna change it to special permit granting authority from the Board of Appeals to the Planning Board for the special permit for electronic sign. But I think Nora was questioning why we were changing it from Board of Appeals, and I think as long as they have like a more comprehensive sort of allowable reasons for a special permit granted. I think there was like some issue with them reviewing some special permits for signs and not all. So just the last page, I have to add changeable copy signs, electronic message board signs, and internally illuminated signs. Special permit granting authority, Board of Appeals. And it requires a business to have an unusual requirement for a sign to be lit by any other means than exterior illumination, must not be adjacent to any residential use, and will not be detrimental to the character of the neighborhood. So that's what I came up with. I don't know if anybody else had any suggestions on the wording for this.
So basically you have three items listed in that sentence here. One is the unusual requirement thing, not adjacent to a residential use or detrimental to the character of the neighborhood. So generally, you know, adjacent to a residential use, that's pretty clear. There's a house there, there's not, right? And detrimental to the character of the neighborhood is a standard that generally the courts recognize, that boards can make kind of that kind of judgment of, you know, is it, and you see that kind of stamp language in lots of things. But the first one, I'd have a real, in other words, this isn't any sort of standard that it's way too broad. In other words, an unusual requirement for a sign to be lit from any other means. So I think that's because you know, every business can argue, well, you know, I need it for my customers to see, or something like that. So I don't know, other than that, what an unusual requirement is. So I think that's a little bit too broad. The only other thing about the adjacent to residential uses is that even in some of our heavily developed commercial districts, like the end of Main Street or the end of like Bedford Street where the Tamarack Liquors are, or a little further up at the entrance to the
They're already in
industrial.
areas with.
There are adjacent houses and they're in a commercial district. And so my question, so it kind of gets a little bit,
Well, you allowed it for them.
yeah, and it's in a commercial district, but just because there happens to be a house that probably will get redeveloped in the next 10 years into a commercial use.
So I think the goal is to get away from these electronic signs, not to encourage more.
Right.
So, you know, just because they're in town already, we already came up with this sign bylaw. I thought it was going to be strong enough to prevent seeing more of them coming in, and unfortunately that wasn't the case. So I'm looking for language that will actually get that done, get that to happen, so that if the use changes or something happens where then they have to become conforming, then they have to be more in character with a rural feeling town, not with a bright flashy town. We have a night sky bylaw, so we don't have streetlights. Why are we going to be allowing flashing signs? It doesn't make sense to me. There's plenty of towns, especially coastal areas, that have we talked about this when Barbara was on the board, this certain feel, that aesthetic that you drive through and you feel like you're in a special place because it looks nice, it feels rural, it's not flashy and bright. When you drive down a portion of Main Street, you can look and you can see at night these signs. They're wooden, they're underlit, they look nice. It has like a country feel to it. It's not this like big flashing scrolling words, moving pictures, Las Vegas sort of feel to it. I think what I thought was the intention from changing or creating this new bylaw that we just did, unfortunately it hasn't done anything. So that's why I want to make sure that the language is clear that we shouldn't be allowing these unless, and we talked about emergency services or some sort of special reason that they'll need to have those.
So we shouldn't have allowed this real estate company up here on.
Well, they permitted.
That was prior to the.
They permitted it before the change in the bylaw was implemented.
Okay. So it's not bad, but it flies in the face of what you're saying.
So two things. One is we included the zoning map in the package. So, but before we even get to that discussion, so because one of the things we could do, and we did discuss this before, is create like an overlay area in the community where we just prohibit those types of signs. And we have many smaller commercial districts scattered and industrial districts scattered about the community where we really don't have any of those signs, or there might be one that would become like a pre-existing non-conforming, but there's hardly any in the rest of those districts. And then you have like other areas like the end of Main Street, which is highly developed, and there's a bunch of signs, and or Route 44 as well, where there's a lot of these signs that you may want to still allow those. So I guess that's my question is, Michelle, because you're pushing for this, do we want to just like across the board, or do you want to
I think that's a good option, Michelle, is to say we just pick one or two areas to allow them and then overlay the whole rest of the town and say they're just not allowed.
Because I can have Serpent.
Don't you think there's already too many? Like if you're talking about Main Street, like don't you think that's a little bit too much already? And anything else, there shouldn't be more, and any should become compliant.
Why would we allow one section and then strike it?
I don't like the whole picking sections to allow it and not. I don't like it. I personally would like to see a rural feel throughout town.
Well, I think the reason I lean that way is I understand what you're saying, but I think we've lost the battle on Main Street. I think that when I say Main Street, I'm not talking from that set of lights all the way up to Middleborough.
Right.
I'm talking from Dollar Tree the rest of the way.
But the good thing is about this sign bylaw, it says that they need to become compliant. If it's, all non-conforming signs shall be removed or shall be altered as to conform with the following provisions when the nature of the business changes and the sign is changed or modified in shape, size, or when the name of the business changes and the sign is changed or modified in shape or size. So to me, that helps bring those into compliance eventually.
So 2 parts then. So say you do that, you leave that. So you're forcing on Main Street for those signs that already do exist to become more conforming, but you've allowed them there because I think, you know, to Mark's point, legally, if somebody wants one up there, they probably could fight it in court and get it because that guy has it and that guy has it, and you're telling me I can't now.
Yeah.
But, so you do both things. You allow it, but he's got to make his more conforming because of the bylaw changes you're talking about. But then, in the whole rest of the town, you just don't allow any at all. So at least, you know, you're allowing them in the 3% of the town that they already exist in, and you're going to let them become more conforming as those businesses change. And then in the other 97% of the town, like to me, the ones that would bother me is the U-Haul on County Road. That's like ultra residential, and it's just in the woods, and all of a sudden you go along and you got this changeable copy flashing LED sign. So what you're doing is you're eliminating the possibility of any more of those throughout town, and you're only allowing on whatever, and again, to what Mark said, maybe on Route 44.
So I agree, maybe 44.
The end of Main Street.
I still think Main Street, there's too many. It just looks bad. It just has a,
Well,
like
again,
a red
that's,
light district feel. Like this,
No.
this is the,
We can't make the Dollar Tree store change their sign.
no.
but,
There'd be a legal battle with that.
but there's plenty, there's other states in the country, there's other towns that are able to have and maintain a certain feel with their signs. And they're far more stringent than this.
Right, but this is like, you know, we're trying to undo something that was done long before we were here. That was sort of allowed. So I think, you know, what you've said about, you know, trying to make them more conforming through the bylaw makes sense. But I think if that's all you do and you don't create an overlay, just say the overlay comes over the other 97% of the town, where you just don't allow them. They are prohibited. That's more effective than trying to change the language and allow 10 a year to pop up over the next 10 years because they're allowed. We just made smaller ones.
Okay, so I would be okay with the Route 44 business and industrial zone area. I don't think we should continue to allow them to pop up on Main Street.
I think from the start, the liquor store, all the way up, like every plaza, every place probably has at least an internally illuminated sign. You know, not.
Are we talking on Route 18?
No, on Main Street.
Main Street, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's
What liquor store?
Star.
Okay.
And I think going up that street, a lot of them have internally illuminated signs.
You can't change Tim right, because he's got that big high.
On the street.
Yeah, I mean, you could put him in a non-conforming district, I mean, you know, and he'd be a pre-existing non-conforming. I mean, you could do that, like Michelle, you had mentioned some other portion of Main Street.
Yeah.
And then going up, not quite as far down as the liquor store.
It started at that right at Bond Street, right?
Yeah,
right,
that's
it's right in that pretty much where all that business starts. Right?
Yes.
The whole business zone, so
Right.
all the red
Yep.
there.
Right.
That's correct.
Oh, But if you said beyond that, so that would be kind of like what Mark, you were saying, that's the overlay, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then what about the other red areas that are down
Either
this? Yeah.
you allow it there, you allow it out here on we're calling it Harding Street.
Yep.
And then we'd have to choose if we want it over here. I'm gonna say that's where Joe's Gas is, along that stretch of 18.
So, yeah, that's.
And then everywhere else you prohibit it.
Does that become a legal battle? People say you won't let me do it, but you'd let these guys do it.
No.
No, because
Becomes a
what'll happen is that the ones that exist in these areas become pre-existing non-conforming. So they're grandfathered. But, and help me here, Mark, if they're grandfathered, are they grandfathered to the new standards or the old standards? And when I say that,
they're grandfathered the way they are today.
Right, but if the business changed,
And they if they want to change the sign, you know.
then they would have to become more conforming.
They would have to become conforming, which would mean that they have to basically
Reduce the size or.
reduce the size, go to the zoning board or remove it.
But if they're outside that overlay,
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
wouldn't they be required to not have, if they would change their sign off, they say, I'm replacing the sign, changing the name, they would not be able to get it internally illuminated, or
That's correct.
they'd have to go with a,
They would have to
not small,
conform.
but they have to conform.
Right, and that's
The overlay as well.
And that's how a lot of communities will address that issue. In other words, they may have had a bunch of signs come into the community and they go, yeah, we don't want that. So they'll make it non-conforming, and then over time, those will
Get whittled out.
slowly go away, and the conforming ones, the thing is you just have to be kind of careful. I mean, you have they're really called highway districts, you know, your 44,
So I'm saying,
this end of Main Street.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure,
these
sure.
are your highway commercial districts. They serve a purpose. They bring a lot of tax revenue. It's already developed in that manner, you know, with, so, you know, those are the districts where you typically allow these types of signs. But, you know, in the area.
I don't know if there's a way to like word it somehow with the, I'm trying to think of like the residential population around those particular areas that we're talking about on 18 and Main Street, but they're obviously less dense residential than anywhere else along those drags. So you have to kind of like.
There's gonna be 40 new units.
Yeah.
Well,
Right there in Main Street.
But I would say that's different than.
Well,
single family.
no, Michelle's right. So, for example, you just approved the site plan for Rhode Island Road,
Right.
okay? So he's got, I forget what it is now, the smaller building is, I think, 6 units plus his, right? So each of those units are allowed to have a sign over the door, and they could, I believe, I'd have to, I don't remember either, they could all have their own, or they could have one larger.
No, I think
out
she's talking
front
about
that
the 13 Main Street.
but he's just given an example that
Yeah.
here we have an industrial, this is gonna have 6 units, and each unit can have all these signs, and here it is right across from residential, adjacent to residential, so.
And that's where I completely agree that in these areas, we ought to absolutely prohibit it.
Correct.
And which is a lot of kind of isolated properties. If you look, there's scattered commercials.
Yeah, I was trying to think of something wording that wouldn't come back like why on this stretch, not on that, not on this part, even though it's.
Oh, but
They're all-
I mean,
yeah.
that's your justification, is that you're trying to, as Michelle
Is
said.
making an overlay
maintain-
that, it's gotta be somewhat cumbersome to get all the,
Well, I think, so what I would do is mark up this map and then talk to Serped about, creating an overlay district map, because they have this, I mean, I thought about trying to do it with the town GIS, but it's just a little cumbersome. To do that, I probably could, but I think it might be easier just to have real mapping GIS experts create that for us. So I could come in, I don't know if, at the September meeting probably, with a preliminary overlay district map to review.
So we're not gonna send any changes to town meeting then?
Well,
So my concern is the longer we wait to put anything more stringent in place, the more they're gonna come in beforehand.
I agree.
And I'm not.
I think it's a
I'm still
two-part thing. I
against
think we
this
need to do both.
Main Street thing. I'm okay with Route 44, but the Main Street is inundated already. I would like to see it roll back. I could see, yes, coming off the highway, maybe a gas station lit up. We don't have a hotel. We've got the urgent care that's lit up. CVS is lit up. I don't think every business over there needs a sign that's internally.
But we're not
It can
forcing
look
them to do
nice
it.
and still be lit up.
We're not forcing them to have them. We're just only allowing them there. And they're good, if we make the changes you made, they're gonna be,
And that's fine. Like, this was where I'm not professional at any means. I was trying to use language that I found elsewhere. But that's why I was saying, is there language that anybody else would rather use for this first sentence to just give it a little bit more of that strength that it's clearly lacking? Because we worked through the site plan review. I feel like we could do one sentence for town meeting if it just gives it a little more strength to not have these popping up everywhere.
What would the unusual requirement, I don't know if that's too.
Well, that's a sentence.
That's the
If
subjective
that's-
thing.
If
Yeah,
that's a
I get it,
subjective,
yeah.
replace it. What would you like to see replace it? I mean, is just must not be adjacent to residential and will not be detrimental to the character of the neighborhood? Are those two things enough encompassing? I don't feel they are.
And the other thing you can do is enact a temporary moratorium
Until this gets done.
for the issuance of permits
Permits
for
for-
internally illuminated and changeable
Until
copy
the sign law,
signs.
until the sign
And
bylaws.
that will give you time to work on it and you submit it.
how about that?
The law does allow you to do a temporary moratorium for the specific purpose with a specific timeline
Okay.
to complete something and so that
So
you don't get.
that would give us the opportunity to amend the language in the existing bylaw and create
And
a
overlay.
zoning overlay map to prohibit them in a lot of areas and only allow them in certain areas.
And give you-
And all the allowed ones would be then to the new standards. So are you good with that, Michelle, if we did a temporary moratorium?
Yeah,
On-
but I forget how we do that though.
So I have to write an article,
Oh, it does
which
have to
would
go to town meeting.
authorize, town meeting to approve a temporary moratorium on internally illuminated signs, changeable copy signs, and electronic message boards. For a period of 12 months,
Yeah, I think
hopefully.
6 months may not be enough if, depending on
Just because of the
scheduling of,
timing, of town meeting.
for the second town meeting, if we'd missed spring, it would be 7 or 8 months, you'd have to
Yep.
extend, so 12 months would be wise.
Okay.
Because your unusual requirement, I'm assuming like something like where it's the police station and
Exactly.
something like that.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of the wording you want to put down, I guess.
Well,
Public
And it was-
It always
safety,
have to be like a specific reason why you need one versus unusual requirement where they can come up with any unusual requirement.
The unusual requirement, I think, was from the size of a sign
Yeah.
that was allowed for an unusual requirement, and that was the size of the name or.
Oh.
I'm sure
yeah,
that's
see,
enough.
that's, very arbitrary. That's the problem. I mean, you could say, for public safety purposes, you could, be issued a permit so the police department could get it, and, urgent care place and something like that.
yeah, medical or public safety type of buildings
Yeah,
would
you
be
can-
allowed to,
Yeah, you could add an exemption and then prohibit it everywhere, but, you know, then what do you do about maybe, you know, like your highway district like 44 or your intensely commercial district like the end of Main Street where you may still want to allow them, but subject to the size requirements we already have.
Even with the unusual requirement or unique requirement, can we put in like parentheses, like examples? Or with that too, we have to still leave
I think you just put in the examples, you remove the unusual requirement to say your
business
would be waived for public safety or medical.
Yeah, you could allow it for.
Where's the police station sign fall? Does that fall within that criteria? It's low.
Yes. It's probably, the maximum allowed is 12 square feet, and that one's probably right around
Close,
that.
right around
Is that
12.
something you're-
And it's off a lot of times, you know? It's, I don't find that one offensive. It's not flashy, it's not
Yeah,
bright.
it's low.
But you need people to know that the
But-
police station.
Yeah, exactly. It's for a specific purpose.
Right.
Public.
That would,
Like I said, I don't, you know, obviously a gas station off the highway, but I don't think a big storage building needs a light.
Flashing
Or I
light.
guess requires a specific use, like public safety use, something like you just said it kind of.
Okay, so
Okay.
are we allowed to vote on that tonight? Because we had signed by law on there. And could that be,
For the moratorium and stuff?
yeah, could voting for a moratorium for a town meeting be considered within the realm of the agenda item?
The problem is it just says discussion, and it doesn't say impossible vote. I know
So-
the select board are getting super concerned about like not having language like that on there.
Yeah. So we would,
I mean, unless you want me to draft something up and you can have a short meeting before the end of the month.
we could have a Zoom meeting for one item.
yeah,
Yeah, we can do that.
sure.
Yeah.
So-
I mean,
so
other
do you
than
wanna
that,
get it
we're
on the
not
warrant?
bringing anything to town
Yeah,
meeting.
I think it's.
I think we just have a Zoom meeting.
Oh, wait, you could do it the 4th or August.
We'll have a Zoom meeting when Mark says it's needed, timing wise required, in order to request to get that on the select board agenda for,
That's for the moratorium?
yes. So we're gonna,
Which will mean nobody can go get an internally illuminated changeable copy or a electronic message board sign until such time as a moratorium expires or
bylaw is
a
amended.
new bylaw is submitted, which would, the article would remove the moratorium at that time as part of that article.
Okay.
So when do we need to hold a Zoom meeting in order for you to be able to draft that, which that doesn't sound super
No, I
complex.
can
It's
do
gonna
that
be
next week. Yeah.
2 lines.
Few sentences.
And it has to get to the select board before their meeting. So should we do it on August 24th, which would have been our next meeting? Or does that give enough time?
I'd rather not, just because, can we do it next week on the 17th? I know that's probably ZBA week, but it's gonna
We'll
be,
do it earlier,
we could, a 15-minute meeting at 6 o'clock?
yeah.
Okay.
I'm on vacation next week. I'll be back on
Zoom.
Thursday. I'll be on Zoom. I'm in Vermont. If I have service, I will. Let me know. I'll drive somewhere. I can do it on my phone.
Forget going doing Zoom in Vermont.
I'll have my iPad.
You can call in, you don't
I can
have
call
to.
in. Yeah, that's fine. Just let me know.
Yeah.
It's gonna be that day. I'll find. If it's Thursday, it's no big deal. It's early
Are
in
you
the
good
week.
with that?
Yeah, I can
And does
do
that
it.
work with the timing that
Yeah.
you need to draft that and that it beats the select board's closing of the warrant?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm gonna call a meeting. Kathy, if you could assist in the scheduling of a Zoom meeting for next Thursday, August 17th at 6 p.m. We'll hold a brief meeting with the only agenda item is to vote on a possible sign moratorium on the changeable copy, internally illuminated message board signs. And so that will be right on the agenda, that's what we're doing, and make sure anybody that wants to attend can get that Zoom link if there's interest. Very exciting for some people.
Hey,
Second.
But I don't need a second because chairman can call a meeting, right?
Yeah.
And that's what's gonna be on it.
Perfect.
So I think that concludes tonight's business.